Hello, my name's Kate Langrish. I'm a milliner and I designed the hat for the Brain Tumour Research Wear a Hat Day, and I'm going to show you how to make it. So you will have downloaded your pattern, which comes in 4 different sections. There's the crown, which comes as a half section. So this is the front of the crown. You need to make it into the whole piece. The same applies to the back of the crown section. It comes as the half. So it can fit onto an A4 piece of paper, and you need to make it into the whole piece. As far as the peak goes, that will already be on the A4 piece of paper. And if you're going to go for the larger brim, that comes as a quarter pattern, which you need to make into the whole circle. So we're going to get started. I'm going to get my fabric. And get pinning. Okay, so we're going to start with the crown of our hat, which is the basis for all 3 of the hat options. So we'll take our front and back sections. We're going to use the material on the wrong side, so this is on the right side of my denim, on the back of it, and we're also going to use it on the bias, which is the cross of the fabric. You see this has actually got a bias line on it. So I'm going to place my front and back sections onto my fabric, and then I'm going to mark around them with my tailor's chalk. And same on the back, and then I will cut them out. You may need to add in your seam allowance at this point, which you can add in as 1 centimetre if you haven't already added it on to your pattern. So you can just draw around and add a little bit more on, so that when you're sewing, and then the same with the front. Take care actually to mark on your centre front and back, because these are really good markers when you're lining everything up before you start sewing. And then we can start cutting it out. Okay, so just going to finish cutting out your pattern. So you will then end up with your 2 sections. Okay, so now we've got our front and our back sections, we're going to pin in our pleats. So you've got your centre front marked here and the corners, and this is where we're going to pleat it. So we're going to take this line here and take it across to the middle there, and then this piece will fold back to there. We're going to take a pin and just pin that into place. Okay, so that's our front bit pinned. We'll leave that pinned for the meantime, move on to our back section. With the back section, there's 2 darts at the bottom here. We're going to pin those in now, and then we're going to sew those up now quickly before we do the pleat at on the back. So I'll do that now, pop those pins in. Again, I'm putting the pins horizontally because I can run it straight under the sewing machine that way. And you've just marked your darts in, so I will go and sew those up now. Okay, so now you've machined your darts into place, we can finish pleating it. So you've got your centre back there at the top and your 2 fold lines. So we're going to do the same as we did with the front. So just taking those 2 points, matching them up, and again pinning in the same way into place, and the same with this side. Pin that into place as well. And that's the back of our cap. Okay, so now we've got our 2 halves, the front and back section. We need to pin those together. So the easiest way to do that is to take, let's say, the front section, because it's a bit smaller, turn it the wrong way round, and we've got our lines here, our markers here, so that we know where the front and the back, the centre is. So we're going to match our centres together. The centre is also where the pleats all meet. So we put those together, you can see. So this is the most important point, because this is our centre point, which is why it's really important to mark that. And we're going to put a pin through that. Now, as you can see with this, because I'm using denim, the seam is already getting quite bulky. If you're not comfortable sewing that on the sewing machine, then just do it. You can just do it by hand. You can sew up the sides to about here and then go over this thicker bit with a, using a hand stitch. But as you can see, I've left the pins like this again, so that we can, if we want to run it under the machine, you can also take them out as you're going if you feel more comfortable, because I said it's going through a lot of fabric. Okay, so I'm going to carry on pinning that, and then I'm going to sew up this seam on the machine. Okay, so now I've sewn up my front to my back, as you can see there. You may want to press your seams open, it just makes it a lot neater. It might be a little bit more difficult in the middle, but it just helps the cap sit better. We can turn this the right way round, and there we have our crown. So this is the front, and that's the back. And you'll want to turn these edges up just to neaten off that. We can pin that and sew that in the same way. And that's the crown. Okay, so now we've made our crown, I'm going to show you how to make the peak, so that when we attach this we'll have a cap. So you've got your peak pattern, and I've cut 2 pieces of the fabric here, because we need 2 pieces, one for the top, one for the bottom. I've used the same fabric. You could use a different fabric if you wanted to, or use the reverse on the underneath, however you want to do it. Mix things up a little bit. I also have cut a peak insert in order to stiffen the peak, so just use a bit of card. This has been done using the bottom half of the pattern, so this is the bit that we're going to snip in order to insert it into the crown, so into the crown section, and then that's going to go in there. So we're going to line these bits up, make sure we've got our centre fronts all nice and neat, and then we're just going to sew round the outer edge of this line. So I'm just going to follow this line, this has got my seam allowance in it, until that's all sewn up. Okay, so as you can see, I've sewn round the edge. I've trimmed the edge of this peak back slightly so it's not too bulky, because we're going to be turning it inside out, and I've also just snipped the edges like that. This is just to ease it as we're going to be folding it inside out. So you can see I've done that. So I'm going to fold it back to the right way round. You can, if you want, again press that seam open to get a slightly smoother edge. I'm just going to push that out with my hand, so you can see. So that's our peak, and then I'm going to take our insert, pop it in. As you see, I've marked our centre front and back here as well, and it's still inside. I'm just going to pop that in there and put it either above or below this seam in there, so that the top is nice and smooth. So pop that in, and you kind of fiddle around with it a bit to smooth it out, get it above that edge, and then you know where your centre front is, so you can line all those up nicely. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin that, and then I'm going to run a stitch along the top of where the peak insert, you can see if I fold it over there, so that it keeps that nicely secured inside that before we attach it to the crown. So I'll go and do that now. Okay, so as you can see, I've run my stitch along here, which is the edge of where the peak is, so that's nice and solid now. I've also snipped this because we're going to be inserting it in a curve. So now what we need to do is take our crown, turn it that way round. So this is my back and this is my front. As you can see, I've still got my centre front here. And then I take the bit that I want on the underside of my crown and I find my centre front again, which I've marked. And I'm going to take a pin. And I'm going to start by pinning the centre front to the centre front. So I'm going to line that up in there. Take a pin. Come through there. And through there. Just push that through there so it secures it. Now we've got our centre point, we can pin outwards either way and it will be nice and even. So then we can just take the other pins. I'm going to pin it normally this way because it's a bit easier, and we'll probably want to sew this on by hand unless you've got a good sewing machine that will go through all those thick seams, especially those bits there you can see. Okay, and then again I'm actually just following the line of the peak. Okay, so that's the hat pinned into shape. So what we can do is we'll just take a needle and thread and then we'll just sew along that line underneath there, and we can come out level with the other line that we've already sewn in. As I said, you can do that on the sewing machine, but these seams, especially as I've used denim, are quite bulky. But yeah, we can just sew that onto there. And then if you did want to line it, you could just take the crown, follow the pattern in a different colour or something slightly more jazzy, and so exactly the same as we did with the crown, and then just slip that inside to cover up this lining, this line here. And that's one peaked hat. Okay, so now we're going to make the hat with a brim. So again, we take our crown shape that we've made, and we're going to use the pattern, the brim pattern, and then you'll need to work out your head size fitting for this. It's going to be marked on. An easy way of doing that is by literally taking your crown that you've already made and working out which size it's going to be roughly. So that's that. This is my insert to stiffen it. This is going to be the exact size of the pattern, and I need to mark on my side points as well. And then I've got my 2 pieces of fabric here. Again, I've used the same, but you could use a different one if you'd rather. And I've marked out my front and back and side. And then this is the same size. This is obviously the pattern, and I put on my 1 centimetre seam allowance, which I'm going to go and sew all that in. Okay, take that over here. Right, so now I've sewn up the edge of that, we need to cut out the centre so that I can put the insert in. So as you can see here, I've got the mark for where my hat's going to fit, but I'm going to cut out inside of that. That's about an inch inside of that line, so that we've got some bits to fold up on the edges. So I'll cut this out. Just going to make a cut in the middle there. I'm doing it through both pieces with the fabric, so use good fabric scissors if you have them. And I'm just going to cut round that line so that we've got somewhere to put the peak insert in. Okay. So Okay, now what we can do is turn it the right way around. Push it out again. Again, you could press the seams open if you needed to, as we did with the peak earlier. Push that out a bit. And then I'm going to try and remember how to put this into here. So I've just folded it in half. I'm going to pop it in like that, and then it should be able to unfold it while you're inside. Take a bit of wiggling. So just play around with it a bit. Again, get it on one side, get the seam on one side rather than straddling both sides of your piece. And then once you've done that, we're going to do as we did for the peak, sew up round the head fitting there, and then we'll snip into that so we can insert it into the brim. So I'm going to go and sew that up now. Okay, so I've sewn the edge of this, and I've also snipped in to that extra seam allowance like that. So this is going to allow us to ease it in to the top of the crown. So now what we're going to do, you can see I've still got my marks here for my front and back to keep everything in order. I've got a couple of side ones there just in case. So now I'm going to take my centre front again, the front piece, line it up with that one, and I'm just going to pin that in. Again, we can do it this way round because we're going to have to sew this one by hand as well. And then I'm going to go to my back, my centre back, and I'm going to take that and pin that one in there. Okay, and then from here we can start working round, so we can go to our side points, and then we can gradually just start easing it in until the crown is sitting where we want it to on the brim. And you'll just continue round until that's all pinned, and when that is all pinned you can start stitching it on. And the easiest way to stitch it on is by coming underneath here, pushing these bits up and stitching this onto here. If you need to cut into it a bit more, then do, because that will take the tension off of any tension that is in there. And then you should have a stitched on hat, a wide brimmed hat. Okay, so this is the finished brimmed hat that I'm wearing. The other option is a percher, making a small percher shaped hat, which you can do quite simply by following the instructions as how we made the crown initially, but just making the pattern smaller. There is a small option as well, so that might be a percher for most people, and then folding up the excess. As you can see, I've done with this, I've used some quite jazzy fabric there, so that's a little option. There's another option here which is a cap, again in more spangly fabrics, and you can see I'm going to add a bit of lining to that one. just to kind of neaten it all off. And then we've also got the addition of quadrants, these little kind of quadrant shapes that you can cut out of anything. I mean, I've used a bit of balsa wood here and a bit of felt here, and these make quite a nice decoration. You can just gather a few of them, cluster them, maybe just pop them on the side in some contrasting colours onto the brimmed hat or any other hat, or make something a bit more sculptural depending on how you're feeling, how creative you're feeling. Here we've got a few examples of things that I've made using the pattern that we've developed. So this is a large brimmed one, similar to the one I'm wearing, made using cinnamon, which is a coconut fibre. You might recognise it, you've probably seen it on hats in the shops. Towards the back we've got a couple of leather peaked caps, which you can see there. And then this one round the front here is a felt percher, so you can see it's perching on the front of the head, and then I've done a kind of decoration with the quadrants. So there you go. Thank you very much for supporting Brain Tumour Research, and have fun making your hats, and please do send us in photos of your results. We'd love to see them. Thank you.